Good evening. Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of Building Better Business, a practice management web series brought to you by Fosoma. Tonight's episode is called Is Your Herbal Practice Safe? Know the clinical and legal standards with our guest speaker, expert Galina Rufner. Thank you everyone again for joining us. My name is Natalia Morrison, and I am the Director of Communications here at FSOMA. And just like you, I am also a licensed acupuncturist. Before we begin, let's go over some housekeeping. This episode is being recorded and will be available for you on our YouTube channel. Be sure to like and subscribe to our channel so you can see all of our videos and be notified when new webinars are posted. Please note that the information shared in tonight's episode by the speaker is for educational purposes only. The views expressed by the speaker are those of the speaker and not necessarily those of FSOMA. And we will be holding all the questions until the end of the presentation. So please submit your questions in the Q&A icon found at the bottom of your screen. And you'll also notice at the bottom of your screen, there is a chat icon, and that is where we can share stories and experiences. So if you wanted to go over now and just let us know where you're joining us from, I always like to see how wide our community really is. So I am located in Miami, and today has been a bit windy and with heavy rain. And hopefully wherever you are, you're having better weather than I am down here. So wonderful. We have Hollywood, West, Stockbridge. Wonderful. Welcome. San Diego. Oh, that's so nice. My brother used to live there. And Chicago. Great. Thank you everyone for joining. I know that this is a very important topic that Galina is going to be sharing with us tonight. So a little bit about Galina. She is duly licensed in Ohio and Florida, and she was formerly licensed acupuncturist and lead herbalist at the Cleveland Clinic in Ohio. And tonight's presentation is geared to raise awareness about the sticky points that can impact effectiveness and legality in our field and in profession when it comes to practicing and prescribing herbal remedies for our patients. So without further ado, Galina, welcome and thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Natalia. Thank you, Soma, for that wonderful opportunity. And I will try to share just briefly, because it's a very large topic, my experience on instituting and working traditional Chinese herbal clinic at the Cleveland Clinic. And probably the most important feature of our practice at the Cleveland Clinic was that we did indeed full spectrum custom compounded traditional Chinese medicine. So some of those points which I'm talking with you today came from all of our mistakes, trials and errors at the Cleveland Clinic. And being a really large healthcare system, which is the second best hospital in the United States, we have had a very robust legal department, which definitely scrutinized us as much as possible. We also were very fortunate to use our internal resources, internal audit for our notes, which provided immense, invaluable experience, which really needs to be in your notes to defend yourself, because that is first and foremost important for all of us. Unfortunately, due to poor education for our legislators at the current moment, because herbs were deregulated in the state of Ohio, and we have a lot to say on that. Cleveland Clinic Herbal Clinic is temporarily closed until law amended. That was one of my biggest reasons of leaving the Cleveland Clinic, unfortunately, because then it will be open again, who knows. But we as a practitioners really need to go ahead and continue the best practices which I learned through the experience on working at the Cleveland Clinic. So with permission of Natalia, I will share with you my PowerPoint for today. And all of these notes, the handout is available at my website. But before I give the address of the website for you, here is my disclaimer that I have no any financial interests with any of the companies referred in these presentations. I have no intentions to promote a specific product or a company reflected in these presentations. All files are fully FDA compliant, reflecting imaginary patients. And this presentation is not intended to substitute legal advice. All information presented is for educational purposes only. So what we will be learning today: how to select the quality herbs, questions to ask when you selecting your vendor, select forms of herbs which you would like to introduce for the patients in your practice, be it raw, patent, or granules. Record the herbs in the soap. Note to protect yourself legally very briefly, because on the documentation, we will have entire separate class on July 20th. There we will be looking a little bit more how to make a medical decision, how to comply to changes imposed by CMS on us starting 2021 and so forth. We'll learn how to calculate the dose for a specific patient using different forms from different manufacturers for different purposes, and collect and report adverse events. Handout can be found on my website, asiantherapies.org Academy page. You will scroll down and you will see this class. Click on the class, and on the class page, you will find the downloadable handout. So the initial intent which prompted the appearance of that class, because I have been so public advocating for traditional Chinese herbal medicine and emphasizing safety of the herbs and education for patients and healthcare practitioners, that I do receive quite a bit of communication from patients. And here is one of the emails which patient is asking me: is the Chinese herbal supplement safe for this person to take, which his practitioner prescribed to him? That is very, very alarming feature to me. Why this particular patient is contacting me and not asking the practitioner, or practitioner failed to explain the safety of the herbs, to explain the quality of the herbs. That's one of the points which I would love really for you to think about: how you're talking to your patients, what information you are providing to them. So few concerns which are always up to the front, as from Western medical practitioners, as from patients, are really what is on the label in the package. Are there any contaminations? And so forth. So according to Machiosha, then we get in troubles with Chinese herbs. It's few instances, or it's due to wrong identification of the herb, or it's due to contamination with heavy metals, or contamination with Western drugs. So those first 3 points outlined in blue, that is something which you as a practitioner have a perfect control by selecting quality product and making sure that your vendor is behind of you and supporting your every statement. The next one is a little sticky point: wrong use of traditional Chinese herbal medicine through self-medication. We will talk about that as well, how to avoid this particular problem in your practice. Next one, administration of Chinese herbs in combination with Western drugs by practitioners not trained in Chinese herbology, or I can add to Matyosha here, by TCM practitioner not sufficiently trained in Western pharmaceuticals and not knowing how to look at that, how to combine that. Of course, wrong use of an herb, for example, wrong diagnosis, that's your careful consideration in your education comes forward. And the seventh point, what I added, ignoring possible allergens, especially in the United States, with our integrative medicine physicians or functional medicine physician diagnosing our patients with gluten sensitivities and all other yada yada is very, very important. Another statement which you do need to convey to your patients, that traditional Chinese herbal medicinals are regulated by FDA. And here is a link for you to look at. And we are regulated under Title 21 CFR 111. We do consider under the supplements, but we should be a completely separate category. So medical records purpose, and again, I'm emphasizing that for you, that first of all, you write in your notes, not for yourself. You write in your notes for lawyer, for insurance auditor, for your colleague for continuation of care, for the patient. And by the way, effective this year, we have a law with the full transparency of healthcare notes. Now notes become property of the patient. You need to invent the ways how to effectively share your notes with the patient. It's why it would be fairly important for you to find a good electronic healthcare record system. And now how to HIPAA compliantly share your notes with the patients. And we'll be talking about that on July 20th in our documentation class. And the last point whom you write in notes are researcher. So there should be some information in your notes which allow for us to convey our traditional Chinese medicine practice as evidence-based. And evidence-based means research supported. With the research, that's in our language. And standardization of the language comes forward with immense importance. So, and another point to remember, that SOAP is your legal defense tool. CYA, that shall be a rule number one. So first point, which you always need to reflect in your SOAP notes. Did you see a correct patient? Did you verify the patient? And two standard patient identifiers are name and date of birth. For traditional Chinese herbal medicine, another point which becomes important is weight of the patient. That's something which I personally don't remember studying in my college. And of course, allergies. Here I pointed just a few of them, which might be in the formula. And by the way, by FDA regulations, these allergen warnings must be on your label. Does not matter. You dispense in raw herbs from your clinic, or you do in patents, or you do in granules, or whatever you're doing. Allergy warning must be there. So a little bit more about documentation. How I said, I have entire class, which you can find on asiantherapist.org, standard terminology class. So how we would select our vendor? Of course, quality of herbs first and the most important. Another thing which I would suggest, if you have an option, ask to tour the facility. Ask to come to the dispensing pharmacy or even a warehouse. If you have an opportunity to visit the manufacturing facility, If you're using patents or granules, that would be altogether an unbelievable experience. And again, I do not promote the companies in any means, but I was fortunate to visit KPC in Taiwan. And it was very, very interesting experience for me. First of all, cleanliness of the facility. You can eat off the floor. That's how clean it is. Another very interesting point was for me, then I asked them what are the selection of the herbs, how they monitor the quality of the herbs. And what the manager of accepting department told me that first of all, they ask for a little sample of the herbs. They tested for all of the necessary tests. After that, they test the batch, and after that, then all of the load arrives to the facility. They randomly from 5 places test the bag for the herbal quality. And the rate of rejection of raw material is up to 20%. That was amazing for me, but that proved that company does not jeopardize the quality. And one of the point of frustration for me actually dealing with KPC is that sometimes herb is not available and I have to substitute it, and I try to find why it's not available, but apparently there is issues with the quality. So that's what again makes me fairly happy. If you use third-party compound in pharmacy, another very important point is ease of prescription software. Personally, my entire practice now that I'm no longer working for Cleveland Clinic is herbs via telehealth. And I moved to Florida now permanently, since I love Florida and my family lives here. And I moved from Florida to Cleveland. So I just came back home. But I still see a lot of my Ohio patients, they all via telemedicine. And in COVID times, I decided I will focus on herbs only. So telemedicine. Accordingly, for me to keep $9,000 of inventory on hand, dedicate the space for storage, make sure that all of the cleanliness, all of the sanitation comes forward, all of the equipment, all of the cleaning, expiration dates, lot numbers, my time to compile the formula, shipping logistics. No, I'm not doing it. Third-party compound in pharmacy, nice and easy, and by the way, cheaper because I don't invest the money and I don't waste the time on building the formula. I use anywhere from 2 minutes to max 15 minutes to build the formula for the patient. That is my way of dealing with it. So another point for me was wide range of single herbs and formula options available for custom formula compounding. And that's maybe another question which not everybody knows, but in majority of the cases, Chinese manufacturers compile the formula, granules, or patents from the herbs which were decocted as a single herb and compiled together as already decocted powders. If we look at Taiwanese companies such as KPC or Santen, they first compile the formula with raw herbs and decoct them together. So one of the major points of attention of KPC and Santen is mimicking our traditional decoction. And we do know that this is important because herbs, and they are decocted together, form new chemical compounds. Okay, allergy warning on the label. If you're doing dispensing, or even if you use just patents, allergy warning on the label just must be to comply with FDA. Shipping options, prescription pickup, customer service, and of course, easily accessible professional support and communication. If it takes for me 3 days to get someone to answer my question from the vendor, I'm not dealing with them. So best TCM compounding in distillers and practices. This applies to raw herbs. I don't do raw herbs. It's too much logistics. because according to FDA requirements, you do need to preserve a lot of every herb to dispense to the patient. You do actually need to have two logs. One is compounding log, there you put in the herb, there you put in the lot, then you receive the herbs, an expiration date, and keep it on a file. And you have to have another log, which you keep in patient file, if you are choosing it to do that way. So the best information what you can find is actually Chinese Herbal Compounding Safety Certificate of Qualification offered by NCCOM. It will give for you a CEUs, and it's a pretty good class with a lot of useful documentation. I have taken it, and I would say that it's very, very useful if you choose to deal with raw herbs. And here is links for you how to find it. The first link is literally to the class. And second one is to APA document, which was developed quite a bit and served as a ground base for a development of this class. So you are very welcome to look at both of them. You know, it gives for us quite a bit which needs to be on the label. I asked Crane permission to show for you how actual label looks, what they do, since they were set up with FDA expert help, and few things which needs to be, first of all, statement that we are not treating, diagnosing, or curing any disease, allergy warning, address of the dispensary. If you're doing it on site, it shall be your address, name of the formula, prescription number, which is very important for your records, because that number which you will put in your records, expiration date, prescription date, your address, full disclosure of the herbs with the pharmaceutical name, part of the herb opinion, and dosage. Dosage is important, okay? So that's what needs to be reflected on your label. Next, the manufacturer, and all these certificates, some of them apply to raw herbs, some of them do not. All of these shall apply to granules or patents. So to the best of my knowledge, only Taiwanese and I believe Japanese companies have TGA certification. This is the highest quality certification available in the industry. But that's something for you to ask. And I would ask, if you do compounding on site, I would ask for quality certificate to accompany each lot of the herbs, at least some of the certificates. And I don't know, have you ever seen or not, but here is an example of certificate of analysis for Shingrén, which puts all of the subjects which Shingrén in particular was tested. Why it is important to know which particular specifications company met. Like, let's say if we look at KP or Santen, you see both specifications, both of these certificates are US standards. We work in US, we want to make sure that we are compliant with US standards. Like Tianjiang, they compliant with Chinese pharmacopoeia, which you see there, and not necessarily the US. Why it matters? Because let's say you see the difference, part per millimole, and here is milligrams per kilogram. How do they correlate to each other? Can we really compare apples to apples and so forth? Really difficult, yeah? Like Blue Poppy, I altogether was not able to find the information, which standards they comply. Spring Wind as well, I'm not necessarily sure, could not find which specific standards. Looking at the numbers, I assume that this is US standards. This is most likely Chinese standards just by measurements, but that's another thing. So concentration, what it is, because concentration is very important for us to calculate the dose. Next one, carrier. In my practice, I had a patient allergic to potato starch, and we actually had to report that particular side effect or adverse event to a higher board. Important. Like Santen uses cornstarch, and I even don't know is it GMO cornstarch or non-GMO cornstarch, was not able to identify the information. Like Springwind and Tianjong, they use maltodextrin, which adds sweet taste. So it changes the property of the herbs. This one, potato starch, actually a little bit soothing to the stomach. So potato is protective for the stomach since it's coating agent to some degree as well. So a lot of points to consider. Another thing, lead. And quite a few Chinese companies, Chinese manufacturers use crude milled herbs as a carrier. But that there is a caveat. It might add to the advertisement from one standpoint of view. From another standpoint of view, it actually elevates numbers of heavy metals. Like if we will take a look at Springwind versus KP, for example, on lead, we see that norm is below 3.0 ppm. If KP tests, it's 0.001. And if we look at Springwind, it's 1.12. So, and that is, again, I am not necessarily sure, is it a number per 100 grams or what it is? I would assume that it's per 100 grams. So why it is important? Because the moment you use higher dose of herbs, you very easily can actually exceed that 3 ppm, okay? That is important for you to know. And I have had patients whose physicians did tested them. Sorry, my screen jumped. So another point which is important, microbiologic testing. Remember, healthy flora is good, and part of the Chinese herbs is probiotics, especially if you use Shen Chu, which is a pure probiotic, yes, fermented product. One of the points to look at is no noise, please. So one of the very important points to look at is what is the number of culture in that. And if you compare, let's say, KP to Chinese companies, you have a very, very different number. Even let's say to Springwind, you see 8,000 cultures to 45. So what was done to the herbs? Why suddenly the probiotic or culture numbers changed that much? To the best of my knowledge, which I was able to find, that herbs are radiated with electron beam. But again, isn't it the purpose of Chinese soup to affect the gastrointestinal tract in the beneficial way? So that is some of the questions which you definitely want to ask your vendors. What is? To me, another aspect, if we look at effect of radiation, what it does to energetic profile of the herbs. To me, it heats the preparation up. And in the United States, then a lot of our patients are quite hot. Do I really want that in my herbal formula? Okay, next point, especially if you deal with patents. How you calculate the dose? You do need to know, first of all, what was the herb amount per dose. Is it disclosed? And we will see a little bit later how it looks. What it is it a water concentrate? If it is a water concentrate, what is the percentage? Is it just baked whole herbs? If so, it needs to be looked at. What are additional substances in that? Are there allergy warning? All that is presented here. I tried to put a nice comparison table for you. Another thing, why I'm so scrutinizing patents. That's actually one of the issues which I encountered in my practice at Cleveland Clinic. And before I started working in Cleveland Clinic, I probably did not pay that much attention to that, since this never was even occurring to me, or did not possess any implications. But working at the Cleveland Clinic, let's say my patient starts thinking, oh, I need to conserve the money. And instead of coming for the next appointment, I will rather go on internet and purchase exactly the same herbal formula. Oh, I have a choice. So what I will get the cheapest one. Okay? And after that, they first of all might have issues with contamination. And the second one, instead of Yin Chao by KPC, for example, they can get Yin Chao Qian Tu Pian by Solstice. And it's whole baked herbs. So they don't take sufficient amount of herbs. And even if there is no anything dangerous, they did not get the effect because the dosage is completely off. So my thumb of the rule is, if person can buy it on internet, I never ever will use that particular company in my practice, just because I want to protect myself from legal issues. Okay, so here's another patent Yin Chao San comparison. I pulled it from Crane Herb site. They do have a really nice option for me to compare different even patents. And you can see that composition of the herbs can be fairly different. Water decocted concentrate 7.5. Here's powder, just steam cooked, non-concentrated. On the top of everything else, that is herbals. I don't have dosages here. So I have no idea what it is. I don't want to be responsible if something is there. And if you live, I believe, Connecticut, read the law in your state, because I believe in Connecticut, their law specifically states that you cannot offer herbal supplement with unknown amount of ingredients. Okay, so if we look TCM zone, I don't know what is the manufacturing process, and that is patent. Okay, it's not granules. So that is important. And it's good if you can see it on the package, but very commonly you cannot. Like, for example, golden flower, on the bottle of the herbs, you don't see percentage. On Crane herb, I see it, but not on the bottle. So if you're trying to pull something off the shelf and offer for your patient, it's very difficult to know exactly what you are offering. But the very same reason, I never ever use any patents compiled by famous practitioners who do not disclose dosages. This is your legal safety, what you need to worry about. And if you don't know ingredients, don't do it. So another pretty interesting study which I stumbled upon is the comparison of the chemical constituents between different forms. Unfortunately, this particular slide came out a little blurry. I have just a PDF copy of this slide because that was a poster presentation at one of the conferences which I attended. I will try to upload to my website a little bit more clear copy of that slide. But you can see that dependent on the form, and it's right here, this particular point, we see quite different chemical components dependent on the form of the formula. It's why in my practice, when I offer herbs, I usually use only one manufacturer and I usually use one form. For me, it's always granules. I can do custom compounding and I encapsulate it. Or if I offer patent, which usually is only for acute symptoms, it's one of the reasons why I looked at Yin Chao San, yes, because that is an emergency formula which you want to keep on hands. And how I said, I keep on hands maybe a handful of acute formulas. Everything else is always just order it from the third-party compounding pharmacy to be shipped directly to the patient. And I have a number of prescriptions to enter in my notes. So, but it's always just or powder or capsules, which I will offer for the patient, because in capsules, it's again will be just the same granules, which eliminates a lot of concern from me how to calculate the dosage, how to stay safe, and for my patient would not be freaking out why in one preparation it's 60 pills a day and in another preparation it's 5 pills a day. So why it is important for us to know all of the lots? Just because if anything happens, like serious adverse event, and we will take a look at that a little bit later, you need to report it to FDA. And one of the points which you do need to report is lot number. It's why even if you offer in for a patient patent, please put a lot number from that particular bottle which you offer it. It's why there is sometimes the issue if you're trying to ship patent directly from the vendor to the patient and you don't know lot number, you might be in problem, okay? So another thing which I always want to warn all of you, please be sure if you deal with human cells or tissues, specifically like placenta, you need unique identification number for that particular tissue, which I never have seen available and never was able to obtain. So on my side, just staying on the safe side, I never prescribe products with placenta. So example of patient traditional Chinese herbal medicine record in the soap. If I order from the third-party compounding pharmacy, shipment of the patent, and you can see that I wrote here that it's patent, name of the formula and what it is. Let's say in this particular case scenario is KPC, concentrated water extract with carrier of non-GMO potato starch. Date entered, prescription number. This is my unique identification number. And if there is any problem, because I order from Crane all the time, so Crane preserves lot numbers for all of the patents or all of the custom, and at any given moment of time, they can retrieve it for me. And if I shoot email to Crane, they answer maximum within an hour during working hours, okay? So, and obviously my clear instructions. And one of the instructions which you always want to make sure that you deliver to the patient, that they do need to separate herbs from medication and supplements minimum by 1 hour. And I usually suggest to take before the medications because medications might have completely different absorption rate. If it's anti-antacid medication, at minimum 2 hours. So I usually recommend before medications. If that particular formula, whichever formula it is, but it's still patent and it's still the same manufacturer or the same concentration, but it came off my shelf. I look at the bottle, here's lot number, I put it right in the patient records. Where exactly it goes and how it goes, we will be talking on July 20th, looking at example of the soap. So factors affecting the dose of traditional Chinese herbal medicine. It's patient weight, severity of complaint, length of complaint existence. Is it functional or structural nature of complaint? Functional obviously will demand lesser dose than structural. In a lot of the cases, when we're looking at Bensky, it will be acute, severe, structural. So what I find in my practice, especially dealing granules 5:1 concentrated, I need a little lesser dosage than Bensky. I would say probably by a quarter or so lesser dosage. So severity of comorbidities, amount of comorbidities, medication, supplements, diet, gastrointestinal tract ability to absorb, lifestyle, and herb concentration. All of them will affect the dose. So now let's just take a look at the weight. And that is a pretty standard guidelines. Even in Bensky or Chan, we see always a range of herbs in the formula. That's where it's stemming from. But for us, it's even bigger fluctuation. In ancient China, it was not so prominent. But now in my private practice or in Cleveland Clinic, I encountered patients from, and I deal with adults. I don't see kids, okay? So I deal just with adults. From 90 patients to 340 pounds patients. Will it be the same dose? Absolutely not. Here is a nice weight to dose guidelines. And this is actually Western guidelines, which they use for medications, but they apply to us perfectly fine. You are welcome to use them. So here is how to calculate the traditional Chinese herbal prescription, classic TCM style. And since, how I said, I'm dealing with granules, and that's something which in majority of the cases still lacking in our colleges. And even then I ask directly sources like KP or other herbal granules manufacturers, I get answers all over the board. So this is more my practice observation from me and to my other colleagues who worked with me and did herbs in traditional Chinese herbal clinic in Cleveland Clinic. So if we look at classic Bensky, this is Bensky as dosages of the herbs for Yin Chao San. And we assume, let's say, I see patient who is 150 pounds, which is average adult weight. If I calculate just mid-range of these herbs, which I did right here, I have 75 grams. And then I do it via Crane website. I literally enter my grams. I don't pay any attention to percentage or whatever. That's what is calculated automatically by Crane software. So I don't have to play math wizard, and I'm not really great with math whatsoever, so I don't go there. Here is my 75 grams middle range formula for other moderate severity illness at average weight patient. Here it is. Now, how I calculate it. So here is average 75 grams a day. If I use 5:1 concentrate, it's actually constitute 15 grams a day. If you use just a powder and you use measuring plastic spoon, which is approximately 1 gram, it's just 15 level spoons a day. Whichever way you want to administer them, 3 times a day, 4 times a day, for acute illnesses, I like more frequent intake. If you use patent and let's say KPC claims to have 0.5 gram capsules, which will constitute 30 capsules a day, so 7 or 8 capsules per intake, 4 times a day. If custom, and I suspect that 0.5 is not exactly correct calculation. Then I spoke with Crane, the exact amount of herbs without the weight of the capsule is approximately 0.335 grams in one capsule. So that will make 45 capsules a day, which will mean 11 to 12 capsules 4 times a day every 6 hours. That is traditional Chinese style. But how many of really big structural diseases or acute diseases I see in my practice? Not that many. Unfortunately, still a lot of my patients, even if I tell them every single time, the moment something happens, let me know. They still say, oh, I'm sick today, I'm going to see a doctor. Okay, I'm still not a real doctor. That's what I practice in my practice most of the time. And I would call it contemporary traditional Chinese herbal medicine prescription style, which is modified Taiwanese style. How do I do that? First of all, I obviously look at chief complaints. So those 2 complaints, first complaint and the second complaint. That is my 2 major patterns. And remember, we always treat pattern first. But because our notes are still in United States, we need to use, and here I showed for you how I recorded in my notes. This is ICD-10 billable diagnosis, anxiety disorder for my patient. And I never use disease. I always use a symptom as a diagnosis or a syndrome. So anxiety, so it says disorder, but anxiety is really a symptom. So in this particular case scenario, it was heart and kidney system disharmony pattern. And I use ICD-11 patterns. It's standardized diagnosis, which will be effective or at least released for implementation, already available on website, but world will start using it January 1st, 2022. So in my second major pattern is dysuria, which is urinary urgency. Yes, dysuria just means disorder of urination, essentially, in plain English. And in this particular case scenario, we will attribute it to the small intestine excess heat pattern. So accordingly, my treatment principle is to calm Shen, clear heat, nourish heart and kidney yin, harmonize heart and kidney. So my additional symptoms are here as well, because if we look at the formula, here's my main pattern, and I would evaluate looking at the patient's severity, complaints, and everything else. That is about 40% of the presentation, what a patient tells me. So I will put 40% of my original pattern in the formula. Urinary issues constitute about 30%. Adjacent symptoms are another 30%. So here are my single herbs to address my secondary patterns. Okay. So now looking at the patient, looking at the pulse, tongue, and so forth, medication of the patient and supplements. We need to look at all of them. So I look at the medications, what is their temperature, what they do to this patient. In this particular case scenario, these medications would cause a lot of the chief complaint aggravation, heating up the patient. So another caveat with granules is raisins and minerals, because raisins and minerals and animal products actually cannot be concentrated. It's why very commonly, if I cannot get already pre-cooked together formula, which includes mineral, raisin, and animal components, to add them in the formula. Sometimes I do, but I usually prefer to give them in the form of the supplements, then we have actually better control in how you see, in many cases, calcium, mineral, yes, magnesium, mineral, fish oil, collagen, animal products. Those what I would use this way, okay? So that's how I look at all that. And we will take a look at that a little bit later, how I determine the temperature and effect of the medication and supplements. Measurable or reproducible outcomes. Being telehealth practitioner at most, it took for me a long time to figure out how to collect the pulse. And in Cleveland Clinic, I was asked to do telehealth 5 years ago. It took for me a long time, but we were offering telehealth way before COVID struck. So looking at the pulse, we can see that patient had really heat. So what the heat manifests like in pulse? It's a number of the beats per minute speed. So 101, 96, 93. And you can see how much more stable pulse becomes. So that is my measurable outcomes, which is very important for your notes and actually for the patient as well. Everybody likes to see that. And I have an entire class on that subject, how to differentiate the pulse. It's available on my website. So herbal safety, drugs and herbs, they do interact. It is why it's so important for you. No matter where I am, or I am in Cleveland Clinic, or I am in private practice, I do not see patients who take harsh anticoagulants like Coumadin, warfarin. There are very narrow safety margin medications. There are a lot of lapses are possible, and guess who will be guilty? It will be you, okay? So with active chemo as well, I deal with active chemo patients only if I can obtain written referral from their oncologist, and I like to communicate with their oncologist, share the notes frequently. It is very important because biggest danger what we have with herbs can potentify the action of the chemo, which increase poisoning effect, okay? So as well, liver or kidney failure, if patient has elevated liver enzymes or creatinine, monitor it very closely. It doesn't mean that you don't have to accept them altogether in any means. You just need to monitor them. And if they are double amount of reference range, engage the physician. Make sure that you're communicating with the physician. Especially being in Florida, you very easily, or in many other states, you can use professional co-op services. Complete metabolic panel really costs $15 or $20, depending which one you order, plus $7 lab draw fee. So it's negligible. It's very commonly less than patient copay for the insurance company for the labs, okay? And patients really don't mind it that much. They're actually happy to see that you do take care about their safety, okay? And that's another point for you to do, like, let's say, whatever you wanna charge, $20, $25 of admin fee for placement of the labs and review of the labs, another point of revenue, okay? So here is just a little bit of information for you on amount of adverse events caused by pharmaceutical drugs and Chinese herbs. And still, we had an aconite death in US in 2017. It's only one, but it's still too many. And it was not handled appropriately by the store in San Francisco. So that's something which you need to be acutely aware. Here's an example of one of my classes, which I teach how I look at medications, because to look at every single medication and every single herb interaction, it's almost unrealistic. So I like to think about drugs in TCM standpoint of view. And the last thing what we need as a profession, we need to make sure that we compile adverse events of herbal formula side effects, because majority of the data which is available, it's usually single herb in vitro or in mice and so forth, and they collect really serious ones. And we need to know even mild ones. And this is the last slide of my presentation, so I will take you to my website. Here on my website, I just today started this site actually where we can compile mild IE report and have our database going on forward. So please use it and let us start as a profession, think where we want to park that IE reporting. And here is a description of adverse events and how we want to make aware about that, especially what is drug formula interactions, which is great unknown. Thank you so much. And I'm sorry running a little bit over time. I try it. I'm ready for questions.
Thank you, Galina, for taking this time to not only put this presentation together for us, but also to spend your evening with us, sharing your knowledge so that we can all be better practitioners and be of better service for the people that we care about, our patients and community. This is extremely important information that we all need to learn how to incorporate into our practice. So let's go ahead and start with questions. Like I mentioned earlier at the beginning of our presentation tonight, please submit your questions in the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. And that is going to help us filter through the questions easier. I do see we have a couple submitted here in the chat box. So first question I have here is, how long does it take you to write your charts?
Depends, because I use EHR system. Initial note definitely takes time. Initial note takes 15 to 20 minutes to write. It does take time. Sometimes even a little longer, depends on amount of comorbidities for the patient. But one of the ways for me to reduce my time, all of my patients fill in the questionnaire with review of the system before and other information. So I don't type a lot of the information what they say. Majority of the time for me to make it makes to rearrange the things that they need to go, to make my decision making, and write down recommendations for the patient. Gathering of info, that doesn't take that much time. I just clarify. Usually my initial appointment lasts 60 minutes, and additional 15 to 20 minutes of time for initial appointment. For the follow-up, it's really not that much. It's usually maybe 3 to 5 minutes max. And I type as I go.
Wonderful. Next question I have is, how much do you correlate pulse diagnosis into your herbal diagnosis?
A lot. Because first and foremost important, because I use excess deficiency evaluation. So that the pulse is extremely important. It shows for me what is the condition. Is it excess or is it a deficiency?
Wonderful. So it seems that those are the questions that we have for tonight, mostly because I think your presentation was very detailed and very well organized and presented. So thank you again, everyone, for joining us tonight. This webinar is being recorded. We will have it for you on our YouTube channel in the next couple of days. For those of you that are FSOMA members, in your member landing page, you'll be able to have access to the recording as well as the PowerPoint slides for tonight's presentation. So don't forget to log in and visit the Building a Better Business page, and we'll go ahead and share that with you. And again, thank you, Galina. I think we will see you at the conference this year.
Yes, you will see me at the conference. And thank you, Natalia. Thank you so much for this opportunity. And for those of you who has any questions, right here you have on my website, contact me. You are very welcome to submit your questions to me. I'm happy to answer. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining us, and have a wonderful evening.
Bye-bye.
Bye.